now we are returning to enliven our picture of the Mediterranean world in the 5th century BC, which is the apex of Greek culture. And with me I have Brett Bartlett.
Hello.
Hello.
Sorry, I am... there's a deep rage inside me just roiling because you just are so willing to call the 5th century the apex of Greek culture. And
yeah? Let your hate out, brother. You got hate in your heart?
Oh, the 5th century is a great century for some, and looking beside all the politics and all that and human suffering aspect of it, as far as art's achievement, you know.
That's all I'm talking about.
Yeah. No, the Hellenistic art is better when it comes to statuary.
Yeah.
The temples are far better than the Hellenistic period. The literature is it's like the James Joyce of antiquity. It's so thick and rich, and you have to step back and read it from how many different angles to get. There's such a rich tradition born out of the 5th century, but this is just me taking issue with you trying to explain to the audience why this subject matter is important. And I'm disagreeing with you out of the gate.
But you should. Because as the great 5th century philosopher taught us, dialectic is the only way to truth.
I'm just thinking...
Figured that one out in the 5th century.
I'm just thinking when Herodotus began his history, or when Thucydides began his of the Peloponnesian War, or when Livy began the 21st book of his history to say, and they all were starting to say why this subject is the most important, if there was just some asshole friend interjecting saying, nah, not yet. And I just did that at the intro. Alright,
well, in any case...
Alright.
We will talk about the disgusting slime that is the 5th century through the eyes of Brett.
It's a beautiful century. I just think to call it the apex, if any qualifying, is to look down upon some great centuries to come.
So, I think probably where we should start, at least without getting too much into the details, is with the burning of Athens.
Yes.
And this is in 480?
Yes.
So Xerxes and Mardonius burned down Athens while its population is away at Salamis.
Yes.
They had fled in order to take refuge from the invading force. And the Persians took advantage of their absence to scorch the entire city, which is a great way to start things from scratch, especially when you've got a lot of money to rebuild, which, following the Persian Wars, Athens would have plenty of, thanks to the Delian League and its monopoly over the wider Greek world. Its monopoly of force, essentially. Which we talk about first out of this event?
Well, there's the building projects that begin. Well, at first, the first couple decades, everyone wanted to leave it barren as a monument.
Yeah.
As a memorial, kind of the same way post 9/11. Some people wanted to rebuild to show, we won't be shaken, while others leave it as a memorial. So,
yeah.
And like all ideas to leave real estate open and in just state of disrepair, that quickly passed and building projects began.
Although I did see some of that in Serbia, in Belgrade. There were bombed out buildings that they had just left there.
From the
90s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, there's still a couple decades before they decide that remembering isn't as valuable as new real estate. Why have this bombed out building to remind us of bombed out buildings, but you can destroy a few of them to make a museum dedicated to bombed out buildings?
It's true. Good point.
Sell tickets,
yeah. Alright. So the building projects. This is where we get the building of the famous Acropolis and the Parthenon, which was a giant house for the goddess Athena, the patron goddess of the city, hence the name Athens. The Erechtheion as well was built to commemorate the battle between Poseidon and Athena over who would become patron of the city. It was also a military stronghold, so it was built in mind. It was built with defense in mind.
Yeah, well, at this point, it wouldn't have been the critical place of defense. It would have been the last line. The main walls of the city were still, which included the long walls all the way to the Piraeus.
Piraeus, right.
Which is, again, an incredible engineering feat.
Yeah.
Not too impressive, but still.
Let's go on a little digression about this one.
All right.
I don't know if we mentioned it in episode 14.
We did mention the Piraeus is the port they have, but we didn't talk about
the story of the oracle and trust in the wooden walls.
We talked about that, I believe.
Okay.
But there were others who believed that the wooden walls were temples.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I thought they were just walls extended all the way down to the Piraeus, and that's why they...
No. The walls down to the Piraeus became a thing after the Persian Wars. The other reading was that I believe it was the wooden walls would be the old temples because they didn't have stone yet.
Right.
So that's why there were people camped out at the Acropolis when everyone else went to sea.
Mm.
But the long walls, that's Themistocles, after seeing the Persians move backwards, the growing tensions between Sparta, and he wanted to safeguard Athens' one major asset, its newfound naval empire.
Thalassocracy.
Yeah. So the idea was to safeguard Athens and its access to the sea. These walls extending all the way from the city of Athens down to the port of the Piraeus, where the navy can still operate without intervention from the Spartans.
Right.
And so Themistocles saw this.
Who were a landlocked power.
Yeah. Themistocles saw, and no one could foresee what the Spartans would do to get ships almost a century later.
Right.
But, yeah, Themistocles just saw what was coming up with Sparta, and that's what really caused more tensions to grow. Because if one person sees tensions and starts preparing for war, whether or not he was correct, it makes no difference.
Yeah, the tension is built regardless.
So,
what else? We've got these walls. We've got the Acropolis getting decked out in marble. Is it Phidias?
Yes, Phidias, yeah.
Yeah, Phidias, okay.
Phi, Epsilon, Eta, Delta.
Yeah, this was the chief brain behind the project at the Parthenon.
Yes, he has apparently... Is it his face or Pericles' likeness on it, right?
On the Parthenon?
Yes, it's no, the Athena or something. There's like a...
Well, there was a giant statue of Athena in the Parthenon at
there was
the time.
a face in like one of the... in the bronze? I forget, there was a controversy that he put either his or Pericles' face in the bronze so you could see someone's likeness in it, and it was seen as just a...
Hubris.
Yeah. And it was a huge controversy, and it either ended his career or hurt Pericles a little, or...
Also, the building of these giant amphitheaters. This is where the city Dionysia, the great festival of tragedies and comedies, start really ramping up in importance.
You mean theaters?
Yes. What did I say? Amphitheaters?
Yeah.
Did they not exist yet?
No. The Greeks. It's not. I don't think it began with the Romans, but the classical Greeks were very much into not constructed theaters, but cutting into a hillside.
Yes.
So most theaters things were performed in would have just been single-sided, like the one on the slopes of the Acropolis. They were just hillside things that were cut into nature.
Right.
So, yeah, well, amphitheaters are cool, but there's something just a little more stereotypical pagan about the way the Greeks were doing theater still.
Yeah. Well, there is, so behind Greek theater, there is I mean, it's a huge area of contention and debate and discussion, and I don't want to get too much into it because it doesn't matter what you say about it, you're stepping on someone's toes. But my view of Greek theater is that it has its origins in human sacrifice rituals, and that it is that Greek theater is sublimated human sacrifice. And so in tragedy we always have usually a priestly or kingly type character who experiences some fall from grace, his life falls to ruins, and he is destroyed, essentially. And this was a scapegoat through which what Aristotle would say was a means of providing a cathartic experience and cleansing, purging people from their, I don't know, violent urges or whatnot.
It is really important to remember how the theater was received. I mean, that they believed it was cathartic.
Yeah.
Sure, it could have no effect on us if we were to watch these, but that these had this significant value to them is attested in the literature.
Apparently modern psychology denies that catharsis is even a real thing, which is interesting. I personally experience catharsis, but apparently you're just like re-imprinting yourself and then satisfying an urge which you should be abolishing and not feeding.
Well, the Greeks like doing it, whether it's good or bad.
Right. That is the Greek style of things. But tragedy became this very important vehicle for couching social criticism. Artists would... almost anything was sacrosanct on stage. There were a few things you couldn't do in a tragedy. You didn't show anybody dying on stage.
No.
You never showed Zeus. Zeus is never once depicted on stage.
I'm trying to think of the gods that you do see on stage.
Even in Prometheus Bound and things. Athena, I think, in Heracles Mad, is suspended in the from the crane. Once we get Deus Ex Machina, a concept of a story ending abruptly because a god descends from the sky on a crane and fixes everything. But tragedies, and even more so comedies, became really the chief outlet for artists to criticize the status quo, the way things were going.
Yeah, the tragedians were a little more oblique in their style, where the comedians a bit on the nose.
Yeah. And if you go and read some Aristophanes, you will have an exceeding amount of fun. Because it's still, like, so hilarious. I don't know, I liken it to something like Monty Python or South Park, perhaps. If you get a good translation, not some sort of 18th century constipated. Half the words are untranslated.
Yeah, asshole is replaced with lower side. Yeah, just replace the words. So just find a body part and replace each example of each private part with that. So every time someone starts stroking the nape of someone's neck.
One of my favorite comedies is called Frogs, and it's about Dionysus descending down into the bowels of Hades.
I actually haven't read The Frogs.
No? It's been a while. I just remember almost dying laughing. Dionysus is going around at the beginning asking all sorts of different people how they get into Hades. And all the suggestions are things like, oh, did you try jumping off a really tall building? So outside of the theater, there were numerous art forms being elaborated as well, and statuary is...
Statuary is starting to look great.
Yeah.
It's still a little rigid compared to what they're going to reach in the 4th and 3rd century, but
right.
It's the very ideal form of stuff. Like, if you close your eyes and think of a Greek statue, if you think of like a really respectful or venerable, like, naked Apollo figure who just looks
like
uncharacteristic, yeah. Well, a little, but he looks more alive than that.
Yeah.
That would be classical.
Yeah.
That.
The women aren't naked yet.
Oh,
They're thinly veiled.
Yeah. The diaphanous isn't a thing yet, where they're thinly veiled. They managed to make stone look like see-through.
Yeah.
That's... The 3rd century is beautiful.
It's very crazy. What do you think lies at the heart of sculptors trying to imitate reality?
I do not know. I actually have to guess that there's some sort of it's probably represented by the change in taste. Like, the 5th century is not trying to replicate reality. It's trying to... I guess it is trying to capture a little more realism.
Yeah, there is an idealism involved.
Yeah.
But I mean, if the topic of your art is always youths and things like that, they're pretty ideal to begin with, so...
Yeah. Yeah, when I think of trying to capture realism, I think of the Hellenistic like the more Baroque stuff.
Dying Gaul type of stuff.
Yeah, that's exactly what I mean. And
I like to think, and I mean, I don't know if this is true, but I like to think that it was once Athens had been fully initiated into the mysteries of Eleusis. Because it had become corporatized. It had become family-owned by the Eumolpidae. And then it was a state-sanctioned cult that anybody attended. And all of these people were initiates in these mysteries. And I think that, assuming that there was an ergotized rye potion being given out as the Kukeion in the mysteries, that they would have had these, psychedelic experiences that made them want to celebrate the real more so than before.
I don't know, because I don't think we have that shift in taste yet in the literature, whereas in the Hellenistic period where it gets really into realistic art, we also get literature that's pastorals and the like. So that's what when I think of the real, I think of. For me, I just think this is what happens when you go from having tyrants or kings, and then the only people who are commissioning art is the one family, so you have one artist or a couple. Mm-hmm. But the second you have a flourishing democracy with admittable aristocrats in it, you start having many artists having to compete for contracts. You have, I'd say, perhaps it sounds like a bit of a subversive endorsement of capitalism, but you have competition and you have a huge increase in demand from different places, and people are just running in to try to test their own talents or improve and compete to be the artist on this scene.
And I don't think those two things are mutually exclusive either.
No. But that, I guess it reflects just where we think the source most cause lies.
Right. It is a pretty interesting question, and I don't think anybody has really one answer for it. I mean, and it doesn't really give much credit to places like Egypt either.
Oh yeah, or other cultures too, because they've been at constant exchange with the Etruscans, who were good metal workers.
Oh yeah, I guess it should be mentioned for most people that all the statues that we have today in museums, all these beautiful white
I was going to bring this up later after we went through the respectable stuff.
Oh, okay.
And I forgot, but go on.
Yeah, all of these nice statues. Well, first of all, they were painted.
Oh,
and they were gaudy as hell. Like, they really had different values in terms of color than we do. And
yeah,
then...
if Liberace just suicide bombed a museum, that's how they were painted.
Yeah, basically. Liberace with a paintball gun going jihad on the Louvre is basically what you would get.
Like, those lips, though, they were so red. I just want to kiss the reconstructions of Augustus.
Those terrible prima porta blue eyes.
Oh, and yeah. The blues were... That's the color that bothers me the most.
Because nothing looks that blue.
I know.
The lapis lazuli blue, which is like nowhere to be found on a human body, or the clothes they are wearing.
Yeah, or their cheeks. He looks dead. What was it, his cheeks? I forget the other colors. They have red.
Just red, I think yellow, and blue.
And green?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Not only that, but these were made of bronze. These were not...
Yeah, bronze were the good ones. Marbles were the, the upper class dad gets in his, in his courtyard.
So everything we have that looks kind of Greek and is not bronze, rather, is a Roman copy. And the reason...
We have plenty of Greek copies too, but yeah, we don't have many, I don't think we have too many marble originals of 5th century stuff.
No. And the bronze stuff is all gone, all melted down for more utilitarian purposes.
There's the Zeus who was found. Or was it Poseidon? I forget.
Yeah, I think it was a Poseidon.
I forget if the controversy is people thought it was a lightning bolt, but it turned out it was the trident, or they thought it was a trident and it turned out it's a lightning bolt.
I mean, ultimately, they're all aspects of...
No, it was Zeus, because people wanted to say it was a trident because it was pulled out of the sea, so people just wanted to say it was a Poseidon. I think that's how the controversy went.
Yeah, I mean, that's where we would find all of these statues, is in shipwrecks and underwater. I mean,
all the ills of our society are the things that are going to preserve us.
Yes.
Piracy, that land stuff at the bottom of the sea.
Yeah.
Huge storms that sink ships, tear families apart. That land stuff at the bottom of the sea. Disease and volcanoes, that just wipes out cities.
Oh, volcanoes are the best.
The worse it gets for humanity in the present, the better you are going to be preserved and people are going to know of you in the future.
Yeah, the more easily they can rape your tomb. So, we have most of these bronzes getting melted down, and they've been, they get used as everything from swords to plowshares to other statues or armor or whatever.
Yeah, weaponry. Usually, because if you get conquered, it's just going to get melted down or for the statue of the conqueror.
Yeah.
So you just start turning that stuff into weaponry and basic tools you need before the war ends in a last-ditch effort.
Antiquities have a wonderful tendency of being reappropriated and repurposed.
Oh yeah.
The
all throughout time.
Acropolis is a great example. It served as many purposes, one of it being a Turkish munitions storehouse, which got blown up and basically had the roof fire off of it.
Yeah, do you know how there's always things being reused for another purpose? I'm still hoping that someday they find something, like a giant stone that had an inscription on one side, and it got repurposed on another side, and then someone later found it and claimed that it was a stone for something else entirely.
That had those two purposes.
Just like they just neglected.
Oh.
So.
It actually was all three of those things. That'd be interesting.
Yeah, because...
Here's a herm, and a milestone, and a tombstone.
There's... people... so many people who try to sell on the modern antiquities market, not so much anymore, but would write on pieces of ceramic and all that were legitimate, remnants from antiquity, but they just give some modern forgery on top.
Right. By the way, a quick aside. If you buy antiquities online, you're an asshole.
Oh yeah, you're destroying culture. I hope you have a nice set piece at your dinner.
But other than that, don't be an asshole, and everything will be good. We can have jobs.
Well, no. The people who buy antiquities from antiquity markets keep them going. And we need scholars to argue in the coming generations whether those antiquities were forgeries or not. And if, they were discovered the proper way, we'd know.
Did you hear about the guy who started 3D printing lamassus?
No.
So, ISIS has been destroying all of these lamassus.
What are lamassus?
They're those giant, winged, five-legged demons that, flank the entrance of cities in Babylon and Sumeria and Akkad and things like that. So ISIS has been mangling these things up and blowing them up and hitting them with all manner of pick and axe and bulldozer and such. So this one guy said that he, in order to preserve them, he was going to make 3D printed copies of them. But they're made out of this polymer that looks see-through, and they look like DMT beings of unimaginable terror. And
that sounds lovely.
They're great. And so I once tweeted something along the lines of, I was very mad at ISIS at that day, and I was saying, for every idol you destroy, I will erect 3. And then a week later I posted this article, and I was like, oh, well, whereas I said that I would, this guy actually did go out and make copies of every idol they destroyed. That whole thing. Erasing the past.
Oh, this is awful. Everything that's
history.
going on there with, the people. Oh, that situation's just an intractable mess.
Yeah, we can't even begin to get into that.
No.
Okay, so let's stick to what we know.
Yeah.
To what can be known. So, in terms of the art world, we have very elaborate pottery as well.
Yes. Oh, the pottery's great, and it has all these nice inscriptions, and it really shows they could write, anyway.
Yeah, this is where we start getting what we might call trademark Greek pottery.
And the great thing here is you can see the alphabet with pottery is in flux. To this point, if anyone knows the Greek alphabet, they use xi for X. At this point, they're still using chi, which we use ch to transliterate. They're using chi plus sigma for the X sound. They use eta for the H sound in the 5th century. It's not a vowel; it's just H.
Right. Now, let's then talk about the language.
All right.
About classical Greek. What makes classical Greek so great?
Classical Greek?
Over Koine Greek or Byzantine Greek? I mean, I realize this is a ridiculous question.
It's an awful question. The people, because all Greek after Attic Greek was judged against Attic Greek.
Of course, right.
So I'd say that everything that isn't... I would love to live in a world for a month where everything that isn't African American vernacular English is judged against African American vernacular English.
That'd be great.
That would be lovely. It's just such an arbitrary standpoint.
Or Chaucer.
Oh yeah, anywhere. I think there would be, for it to be effectively done, there needs to be a population that can do it right, who can just, with complete institutionalized assent, just make a person feel lesser for the dialect they speak.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, Attic Greek is great. Koine Greek's quite good as well. There's a lot of great literature in it. The problem is, most Koine writing isn't done by the learned class.
Right.
So
it means common.
Yeah. Because because later people who wrote like in the Second Sophistic and the like, a lot of people who were writing in the 4th century AD, like their Homer, but they were speaking Koine.
Right.
That's how they spoke. I mean, they might be at parties trying to affect Homer with Koine pronunciation, but...
Really?
I don't know.
No. Like, is this a genre now?
No, but there were 4th century epics with, like, in the Christian period of the Empire, with people writing...
Oh, like the Dionysiaca.
Yeah.
Although the Dionysiaca is bizarre because it's very Homeric.
No,
like, it uses Homeric Greek.
I forget what Faulkner had John Shen reading a few years ago, but it was an epic romance thing, and the only translation that's been done in the last 200 years in a language John Shen could read was a 19th century French thing. There's a lot of late antique Greek writings that really you can see that they have not forgotten their tradition.
Oh yeah, and I mean, like novel and romance as genres start in Koine.
Yeah.
In the 3rd and 2nd centuries BC. But that's outside of our scope. So, how would we say does Attic Greek differ from Homeric Greek? What are its...
Well, first of all, Homeric Greek is not... It's a hodgepodge of various dialects.
It's an artificial...
Yeah, it's artificial. It has... If one form doesn't fit the meter, there might be another form of the word. No single dialect has that many collateral forms. This is an example of just being very... It's mostly Ionic, Homeric. You find some Doricisms, you find Doric, Iolic, but it is very much an affected
he mix and matches dialects to fit the meter of the poem.
Yes. There are later poets, when we get to the Hellenistic period, once we get to Theocritus, the guy, depending on the genre, would choose a better dialect for the subject matter, but...
Could you imagine if someone did that today? I mean, it happens a lot in hip-hop, but because it's very fluid in like how you choose to say your word. Yeah. But if you decided that you wanted to write a piece or give a speech, like a presidential speech, so you decided to speak like a Texan as the president of the United States instead of, or speak like a Mexican immigrant or something like that. Something I was wondering about was if you think this period demarcates the beginning of Greece as understanding itself as a whole, as like an ethnos.
Yes.
Yeah. As Hellas, and not just disparate states.
Yes. Well, that's the thing. There's a bit of a tension at this period. They see themselves as a common people united by a common tongue with a somewhat common cause in mind, but they do not wish to be a common government. They do not wish for unification. There's no like in that awful 300 movie. There's no desire for like a Greek unity.
Right.
They're all like interstate relations were things of expedience, as they always are. We just like even now.
We make epistemological cartoons.
Look at how Ontario was under Trudeau with the at the expense of the West. There's always going to be a feeling, no matter how united they are, that something's being done at our expense. Why should we be here?
Right.
But yeah, these alliances that the Greeks would form would fall apart the second they lost their value. Athens and Sparta had a falling out. And then after the Peloponnesian War, this is going into the 4th century, Corinth just completely abandoned Sparta for the same reason that...
Right. And that would be the missing piece of the puzzle that would collapse their empire eventually.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That and just having a very predictable phalanx that people started learning how to outmaneuver. They were rigidly conservative, and that was all right for the beginning of the phalanx, but by the 4th century, people are starting to discover you can do things with even that limited mobility, especially if you can make use of cavalry.
Right. Which is newer of a phenomenon than people think it is.
Well, cavalry, that really depends. I mean, horses came in Egypt in the Middle Kingdom, the late Middle Kingdom?
Yeah, but they were only as chariots. They were nobody ever bothered to ride on
Oh yeah, I'm just talking about the general knowledge of using horses in battle.
Yeah, but I mean, as a strategy of using cavalry effectively with riders straddling the back directly of a horse, that's a late development.
Well, in Greece.
Yes.
All right.
It's very rocky terrain, and
yes, that was just cavalry was the thing of the privileged people who get the right to flee or collect the most booty.
And why why Thrace is thought of as the land of the horse, because it's a lot flatter, it's a lot more pasture land, it's greener, it's just overall better for horses.
Yeah.
So then linguistically,
all right,
how did this sense of understanding affect? I mean, the Greeks understood themselves as an ethnos by virtue of their language.
Yes.
And by their religion.
Yes, there's no universal religion.
Of course.
But
they worshipped the same gods.
Yes.
And these were linguistically bound entities.
Yeah, they all had their Zeus, but there might be a different rating for how important one god is in one polis over another.
Right.
I mean, Zeus is Zeus.
Yeah, he's the sky.
Like, the value of Athena is not the same everywhere.
Right.
But yeah, the common Greekness. I think it was a. How did it affect? So, what's your question again?
How did that sense of cultural unification? How did language play a part in that?
Well, aside from recognizing their common language, it was. I don't know how else.
So all the dialects were mutually intelligible.
As far as I'm aware, yes. I'd compare it to how the English view the Scottish accents. And if you were to get a small clip if you watch the BBC and get a small clip of someone speaking a Scottish accent for about a minute, you might not understand a thing of it. You'll get used to it very quickly. The Greeks could understand the Doric dialect. If you listen, if you read some plays where they have Doric characters, it's written in quote-unquote Doric. It's an Athenian's understanding of Doric.
And this is what the Spartans would speak.
Yes. And so it's much like hearing like Mike Myers doing a Scottish accent. It's not a Scottish accent, but it's a Scottish accent.
Right.
That's what he's trying to do, and as a caracature it suffices.
Right.
But they get some vowels wrong. There's so-called hyperdoricisms where they turn some Edas into an alpha where they'd still be an Eta in Doric, because the big thing about difference between Athenian and Doric is that Athenian has a lot of Edas, Doric still tends to have a lot of alphas. So it's one big sound difference, but the Athenian playwrights did not understand the nuances.
Doric suffers from Sanskrit syndrome.
No, it's Ionic / Attic for some reason being the weird one.
The alpha dominant.
The Eta. That's the innovation.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that is very much the innovation. So Doric is a little more conservative in this sense.
So let's talk about a religion. Let's actually just take a minute and talk about religion, at least like paganism in general. in relationship to language.
All right.
And how easy it is to get a better understanding of how the pagan mind conceived of these gods when we look etymologically at what their names mean.
All right.
Well, first I should say, do you think that a Greek worshipping Zeus knew that Zeus derived from the word for sky?
The average Greek?
Let's say the educated male landowner.
Oh, he probably, almost definitely thought that.
Yes.
There are puns on this all throughout poetry.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it is not just my flight of fancy to think that this would play a dominant role in the understanding of the character itself. The word that the character is based off of.
Yes.
Okay. So what are some other gods we can look at?
Well, Dionysus.
Yes.
He comes from, is it the...
He's the Zeus of Nysa.
Yeah, yes.
And Nysa is... There are like 12 different Nysas.
Yeah, it's like Mount Ararat.
It is just the world mountain. It is the center of the world. It's this kind of like the height of Horeb or whatnot.
Yes.
All these world mountains are cosmic centers, and Dionysus is the god of the cosmic center. He's the sky of the cosmic center. So that Dionysus is a very solar god. He's often associated with the sun and the role of the sun in astrology. This is a very common practice in Orphism. If we look at the myth of the Orphic Zagreus, it's very clear solar imagery at work. And that's where we get this prototypical image of the son of God, who is Dionysus, the son of Zeus, suspended on the cross, which is the cross of the four directions. And this is all astrological imagery that the crucifixion story is derived from originally. So this is, the astrotheological interpretation of Dionysus. And we see this pattern in so many myths. But in any case, who else do we have?
We have Dionysus, we have Zeus.
We've got Hestia, who is a goddess that I thoroughly enjoy.
Well, I find her underappreciated, but...
Yeah, the goddess of the hearth, who...
She would be underappreciated.
That's part of her portfolio.
The uncounted Olympian.
She makes 75% of what Apollo makes. Speaking of which, Apollo, we have no idea where that he comes from. He is a solar god as well.
There may be a reference in the Linear B. It's very uncertain, and I think it's just a hope. There may be a reference to him, the Pion. Not him, but the Pion in Linear B. So that's the only suggestion that he was even recognized by the Mycenaeans
at the time.
Yeah. So how new he is, I do not know.
Yeah. He is a very elusive god. Some people think that his name means I destroy. And he is a serpent slayer god. He's kind of plays that archetypal Indo-European hero, dragon slayer role, which is also an astrological event. But other than that, we've got Hera, whose name simply means mistress. and that name would carry on in Latin as well. Just simply Hera is one way of referring to a female.
Are those actually etymologically linked?
Oh yeah, they're the same thing. It's just one is a direct borrowing, I think.
Oh, okay, if it's a direct borrowing.
But I mean, what I think might have happened was that Greek slaves being brought over to serve Roman masters would just address their dominas as eras.
Sorry, I have to disagree with you.
Yeah?
Era is just the feminine of eros. Master.
Right.
So, for it to be...
But isn't that what the god, like where the goddess comes from?
I can't see how they'd be related though, because I can't see where a Greek word would have an H and a Latin one would have nothing.
Oh, instead of having an S or something like that?
Yeah.
I see. Okay, good point. Yeah, then I don't know where it comes from. This Hera name.
I have no idea her etymology.
So, who else do we got? We got Diana. Well, she's not Diana yet, she's Artemis. So, the virgin huntress. And...
Well, I don't know how many of these goddesses' names are actually Indo-European.
Probably none. I mean, so there were so many goddesses before the Indo-Europeans arrived, and they kind of just married them off to each other, and the ones they didn't marry off were maiden goddesses. But maidens aren't mothers, except for Artemis at Pergamum for some reason, because she has 10,000 boobs.
Yeah. The Greek gods, their names are...
very elusive.
Yes.
They must have sort of taken their full form by Homeric times.
Oh yeah, that's what makes Apollo so interesting. Because he's such an important figure in Homer. He's the first main god that's acting.
In the Iliad, he rains plague.
Yeah, he's so important.
Yeah.
So,
but he is depicted as an Eastern god, then. Because he's a Trojan worship god.
Yes. Huh.
Which I had never really considered.
Yes. But
that dichotomy doesn't really play...
Yeah, because all the other gods are recognized.
Yeah, and Apollo is also the quintessentially Greek god, or at least becomes that.
Becomes, yeah. I don't know how he was esteemed or viewed in the Homeric period.
He's just a plague god. He's not even really anything else. If I remember correctly, he's an archer who rains plague, and there's very little else said about him. There's no
I know
solar...
he assumed the role of the sun deity later.
Yeah.
Never completely assuming it, but...
No, he becomes Helios.
He does completely become Helios?
Yes.
I thought that role was never completely wiped out.
Well, they're like two simultaneously existing
I always
parallel...
pictured him like having Helios on a leash.
Oh, yeah?
That's how I always viewed it.
Well, there's the Helios and Phaeton story.
Yeah.
Which is totally racist.
Why?
It explains that black people got turned black because Phaeton rode the chariot of the sun too close to Africa and burnt everyone. So that's how the Greeks thought of things.
Ethiopia.
Yep. What is the etymology?
Ash face or burnt face.
Ugh. It's interesting that
Ithos plus ops.
It's interesting that even in the 21st century, most African countries still have just names that are like the Black Land,
Nigeria,
Black Land, or the Sudan means black in Swahili or whatever, or no, in Arabic. Sorry. Same thing. Yeah.
This is awful.
Could you imagine if every European country was just like Blanc, like Alba,
Bianca?
Just be...
White land. Yeah, Africa, that's a very unfortunate naming system when you get into the etymology of so many places.
Well, I mean, even Kem, like, what the Egyptians called themselves, was the Black Land. A very, very, very long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
So, the tradition is rich. So, what were, if any, Greece's external politics?
So, which state would you... Like, each state had its own external politics, aside from the Delian League.
But I mean, culturally more, because we could talk for hours about who waged war on who, when.
Oh, Corinthian pottery was now being eclipsed by Athenian, but
yeah.
Almost everything was being eclipsed in value by Athenian.
And now were these filled with primary goods? Were they shipped off to Egypt or Syria? Or
they were trading throughout the Mediterranean. The Etruscans are getting hold of this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
very well received.
Yes. I mean, sometimes the West becomes a more difficult passage with difficulties with Corinth, but for the most part, yeah, their exports are...
Right, and we can't forget all of the colonies,
yes,
of which there were many, reaching as far as Spain and in the Black Sea.
Yeah, but the Athenian colonies were largely the Black Sea. The Athens itself didn't get into colonization till rather late. It has no droppings on the coast of Italy or near Spain, like where Marseille is now.
Yeah.
So you get Amphipolis in the north, and some things stretching into the Black Sea. And they're quite prolific along the Black Sea.
And what were they pulling in from those regions?
Oh, food and slaves.
Yeah. So
yeah.
Thracian slaves who would have inevitably brought in their religion.
Oh, yeah, but I doubt that religion moves up the social class that
It does.
much.
In Plato, we have the Bendidean rites being celebrated in Athens. And this is a totally Thracian celebration that was, is accounted for happening in Athens. And there are, immigrant religions have a big impact across social mobility. I think it has something to do with, exoticism of the other.
Okay.
And syncretism at work with that sense of these are strange foreign gods. I can probably add them to my collection and yield the full benefits. There could also be an element of when you conquer a people, you take their gods.
Huh.
And but the colonies were not conquerors. We can't retro project early modern and modern attempts of colonization. Well, not attempts, just colonization with the colonization.
There have been some failed attempts too.
Yeah, of course.
And we retroject comedy onto that usually. That usual 1.5 years of suffering before the last house light goes out.
Yep. But yeah, the colonization in the Greek world was not in the same sense as the colonization in the modern world.
No.
And these were smaller trading outposts.
Far more diplomatic, I'd say.
Yeah. They were usually symbiotic with the areas around them.
Yeah, it wasn't based on conquering. It was usually based on trying to get permission and even protection.
Yeah, and a lot of trade. I mean,
you promise them
trade
wealth.
hubs.
You're pretty much buying protection from the nearest warlord.
Yep.
And if you bring with their protection, they won't hurt you. And if you actually bring something, you become a dear friend. Yep.
Oh, and these people get brought over to see Greece, and
yes,
there's that one Thracian who got.
There's that one Thracian during the Peloponnesian War that Thucydides talks about in Book 2, I forget his name, who actually got an Athenian citizenship. And that's how. And at that period, that's how valuable his alliance with Athens was.
Yeah,
in the time of crisis.
They didn't mess around with citizenship back then. It was serious business.
Thracian.
Yeah.
Not even a Greek speaker. Oh.